This has obviously been something that's gotten a lot of attention, a lot of conversation. We had a great turnout of the public hearing a few weeks ago. I'm sure I don't speak for myself only for myself. I definitely speak for myself. I don't think I speak only for myself in saying that I've spent hours, probably more time looking at these plans than I have in any plans on all my time on planning commission or council, between looking at the plans and talking to neighbors, responding to emails. And first of all, I want to say people that are upset with a development proposal. It is uncommon, frankly, to have this widespread a discussion and have it be as professional and civil and reasonable as it's been. I know that not everybody is thrilled with what's been shown, but everybody that I can recall that I've talked to, and I've talked to a lot of you, either through email or over the phone or in person, has desired to come to a reasonable solution on this. And so I just want to commend all of you. It's really reflected well in our community, and frankly, it's probably generated some friendships within your neighborhood, I imagine. But as we come here tonight, I think first and foremost, it's important for us to understand that what we're talking about tonight is not a site plan. What we're talking about is preparing a rezoning. Now, it's typical for us as a council to want to see a lot of details of an intended site plan before we talk about a rezoning, because rezoning is no small matter. So as we often do, we've done with this one, we've kind of held up the zoning to get more details on the site plan. So that's why we've spent so much time talking about that. But even if this were to be approved tonight, I want to make it absolutely clear that does not finalize a site plan. There is still more discussion and another approval that's needed for a site plan. So I just want to make that clear. I also hear that people aren't real thrilled about R1. I know that to be the case. I will just say that coming into a project like this, if I were to look at this fresh, without any of the conversation that's been had, I too would look at this and say I would like to see at least R2 zoning on this. And I think the reasons for that are clear. You've got the R2 zoning to the south. You've got some R3 zoning to the east, but as many of you residents have said, and I would concur with you, that the ideal situation would be to have at least R2 zoning on this lot. It is consistent with the surrounding neighborhoods. It doesn't mean that there's not opportunity to do some different things, but it is consistent with the surrounding neighborhoods, which is something that we typically aim to do. Another thing that has been expressed, and I would also say I concur with, is that 60-foot wide lots should be a minimum. Whether this is R1 or R2 zoning, there are waiver opportunities to do something less than a 70-foot lot. What you guys saw previously, what was shown to us previously, was a plan that included a number of lots that were 50 feet wide. I will speak from my perspective and say that's narrower than what I would like to see there. In the time since our public hearing, the developers come to us with a revised plan that shows lots at a minimum of 60 feet. With the exception of there was a strip up close to bushes, if you guys can picture that at the north end of the property in question, that there's still some discussion around that. Well, there's discussion around this whole thing. Where am I going with this? Objectives for me are, ideally, I'd like to see at least R2. Ideally, I'd like to see 60-foot minimums. Then another objective for me, though, is to do this in such a way that somebody wants to come in and develop it. And it's important for us to understand that developers have business cases they have to work with, too. And finding that perfect balance between a developer's desires, which naturally they want to get as much economic benefit out of it as they can, just as any of us would. I mean, for the same reason that many of you sitting here are concerned about your property values. It's the exact same reasoning why a developer would want to get as much out of a property as what he can. We all have the same objective there. The goal at the end of the day is for us to find what's best for this community in the long term. With some discussions that we've had just even today, just talking to our planning director this morning, and exploring the opportunity of what if we were to take that northern strip that's along bushes, and we were able to make that available for something smaller, whether it's possibly, again, keep in mind we're not approving a site plan tonight, but possibly a strip of condos similar to what's east of St. Timothy now, in exchange for the opportunity of looking at doing R2 over the rest of the site. Now, as I said earlier, that does still leave the option open that there could be a waiver for in the interior of the site, as we talked about before, doing 60-foot minimum lots, which, again, is something that I would say anecdotally, I haven't done the statistical analysis, but based on the calls I've gotten, is something that would be pleasing to the people in the surrounding neighborhoods. Keeping R2 size lots bordering on Munger Street, and at least R2, if not R3 lots bordering on Fitzgerald Street. And so that's kind of where my head is at. And with that, if the developer, if Mr. Sauvé wouldn't mind coming to the podium, I just have a quick question for him, because I have not talked to him directly about this. We've had conversations, but Mr. Sauvé, I was just wondering if, in order to move this forward, because I know you're on timelines, and I know there's even some deadlines as far as the agreement with the schools and stuff, how quickly this has to move. And I foresee this being some kind of residential at some point. Would you entertain the idea of zoning this R2, but maintaining a small strip of R1 on that, just to the east of St. Timothy Church and at the northern end of the property that borders on Bushes, and doing the rest of it as R2? If we were to prepare an ordinance to do that, is that something that you see as something that's workable with what you need to do?
Yeah, we're willing to entertain R2 cluster adjacent to the residential neighborhoods, and R1 cluster adjacent to the heavy commercial and office on the site. This has been so fresh, I couldn't give you details on what that would look like, but something we've flushed out in the next couple of weeks that I think will be palatable for all parties.
Okay. And it's with that notion in mind that I offered the approving resolution for sake of discussion tonight, and I would offer that approving resolution to do just that, and we can work out the details with the planning director if there's support from the council, but to do R2 over the vast majority of the site, but a small strip of R1 on that strip to the east of St. Timothy, and then on the far northern portion of the site. And we obviously would have that mapped out by the time we got to the point of a site plan. But again, I think this is a reasonable solution that, for the purposes of tonight, keeps this things moving forward, which personally I would like to see happen, because I think this is going to end up being residential of some kind anyway. I don't want to hold it up, and I don't want to jeopardize the timing that you have with the schools.
Thank you.
Backyard borders the Clay property and looks straight across the field to St. Timothy Church. President Toye, I would appreciate it if you could ask Councilman Bahr to reiterate his proposal. I heard the words that many of us in the audience don't have the hearing we had a few years ago. And to be honest, the acoustics.
What'd you say? No, I'm teasing.
The acoustics in this area, in this building.
Certainly.
Lack something.
Did
However, to
you
keep
want me
going.
to ask him now, or, I'm sorry.
Yes, I just, I heard the words R2, I heard R1. Would you please,
He'll be
I'd like it
happy to do that.
repeated.
Yeah,
Certainly.
I'd
Go
be happy to
ahead.
repeat it. What I'm proposing is to zone the vast majority of this property as R2, with the exception of, we don't have the maps in front of us right now, but there's a small strip to the east of St. Timothy Church, which on the plan that you previously saw was showing as condos. And then there's a small strip that backs up to Bush's grocery store, which on the plan that you previously saw showed some 50-foot wide lots, okay? And I already specified I'm not a fan of 50-foot wide lots, but that's for the site plan later. What I'm proposing is to allow R1 zoning in those two small sections, but then for the rest of the property to zone it as R2. So I haven't done the math. My guess is we're looking at 85% of this property, including all of the properties that come up to the existing neighborhoods, as being R2. That's what I'm proposing.
President Toye, if I may inquire further
Yes,
of
go right
Councilman Bahr. Are you, the second I understand the zoning along the wall. The other unit, is that at the inlet from Newburgh along Munger?
No, it's not. What I'm proposing is to the east of St. Timothy Church. It's a north-south section of the street as proposed. Backs up to the parking lot of St. Timothy Church.
Okay.
So what I'm envisioning, again, I don't want to get into site plan tonight. This is about
Understand.
moving this forward to zoning. What I'm envisioning is all R2 lots backing up to Munger Street, okay?
So-
And Fitzgerald, thank you, Councilman.
Yeah, sure.
R2 is very important to me. No 50-foot lots is very important to me. And I realize we're overlapping into site plan issues, which can hardly be avoided due to the way this proposal was brought forward. R2 zoning, if it applied to the whole development, would allow 3.5 dwelling units per acre. The single-family cluster option would allow smaller lots than standard R2 in selected portions, however the council decided and approved. So what I'm not sure about the proposal is whether or not you're talking about controlling the overall density,
Okay.
which is important to me and my neighbors, to the 3.5 number in the zoning audience, and then utilizing a single
Okay.
family cluster option
Mr.
to put in the
Secluda?
smaller units
Mr.
along the
Secluda?
bush wall and behind the St. Timothy parking lot.
Mr. Secluda, I have to interrupt you. In all fairness to everyone, we got 2 minutes, and perhaps Mr. Bahr can answer the last part of your question, then we've got to
Just
move
say his
on.
concerns are noted and understood, and
Okay.
we'll address all that, assuming this, if this goes forward when we get to the site plan.
Thank you. Okay.
I don't
Thank
mean
you,
to
Mr.
drag it
Secluda.
out, I just was trying to
we get
understand
it.
what we're
We get
talking
it.
about.
And your knowledge of parliamentary procedure is impeccable, thanks.